Hello, I'm Dr. Winnie King, and welcome to Keeping Kids Healthy. Now, this is a program about your children's health, and it comes to you from the lobby of the Children's Hospital at Montefiore in the Bronx. During an average week in the United States, there are over 8,000 preterm babies born. That's babies that are delivered prior to the 37th week of pregnancy and often weigh only 2 to 4 pounds. Many times, these babies have to spend the first few weeks or even months of their lives in a neonatal intensive care unit, which we call a NICU. Now, life in the NICU can be terrifying for new parents, but it can also feel like a safe place for them and their little babies. Come with us as we visit one family that gave birth to premature twins.
We weren't totally surprised that they were premature, but we were surprised at how premature. Being twins, we expected them to go about 38 weeks. They ended up coming 6 weeks early, so that was a bit of a shock.
Samantha and Gerard Masconi came into the world 6 weeks earlier than expected, weighing just a little over 3 pounds each. Immediately, the Masconis' whole world was turned upside down, and the NICU became the focus of their lives.
You realize how fragile their little lives are at that point, and it's heart-wrenching, it is. It's really heart-wrenching.
Initially, the parents are very frightened, and we offer them as much emotional support as we can.
The Masconis learned firsthand how unpredictable life in the NICU can be when Gerard developed an infection.
I was feeling very good because they were born, they were never on oxygen. Things were going very, very smoothly. But it's amazing how quickly things can turn around. A simple thing like a staph infection can cause his heartbeat to get erratic, which is extremely frightening.
It is a roller coaster ride, and quite often the baby could take 3 steps forward and 4 steps backward.
The hardest part is leaving them, because you come, you spend a few hours, and then you go home and they're not with you, so that part's kind of hard.
Going home at night is tough for parents, but at least they know their preemies are in good hands in the NICU. That's why taking the babies home can be scary.
A lot of moms are very frightened, but they have the assurance of the monitors and the staff. So when it comes close to discharge, a lot of times the moms will get nervous. We do offer that a night or two before the babies do go home, that the moms room in, and we give them a private space with their baby, and just knowing that the staff is in the next room to help seems to calm them quite a bit.
It'll be great to get them home, so I'm very anxious to get them home. But given that we saw how delicate their systems are, I think we'll be a little bit more careful.
It's just hard to explain. It's the feeling that comes over you, and you just can't imagine them not being here now. You just can't imagine them not being a part of your life.
Well, we made that visit to the intensive care unit just over a week ago, and while the Masconi twins are slowly gaining weight and improving, they're still in the hospital, so the Masconis couldn't be with us here today. But here with us now is one mother who knows very well what the Masconis are going through. I want you to meet Tracy Jackson and her beautiful 21-month-old daughter, Madison, who was also a preemie. And Madison is not even remotely interested in what we're doing here today. She's got her own agenda, so we may have to help Madison to leave us. Her older daughter, Helena, is here with us also, so she may take Madison away if Madison decides that there's some more interesting things going on off the set, so bear with us. Also joining me is Dr. Deborah Campbell, and Dr. Campbell is the Director of Neonatology at Montefiore, and she also works with Madison in a program called LEAP, and this program monitors children who are born prematurely, and thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it, and thank you, Miss Madison. Let's talk a little bit about what we heard some of the anxieties that go on with parents when they have babies in the NICU. I mean, the NICU is a fabulous place. They do wonderful things, and it's hard to leave your baby when you've got a newborn, but at least you know they're in a great place. But then you have to take them home. What are some of the concerns that some of these parents will share with you?
Parents of premature babies actually have many concerns. Those, as any other parent would with a new baby, in terms of feeding, diapering, just the baby adjusting to being home. But on top of that, babies who've required a stay in the NICU, the parents will oftentimes have additional concerns. The baby's breathing, how well they're able to feed, even just going home without all the monitoring and the equipment.
Yeah, you sort of feel like you need all of that just to make sure they're okay. How about you, Tracy? Did you feel that way when you were ready to take your baby home?
I was nervous about that because I depended on the monitors while I was holding her to make sure everything was going okay. When you go home, you don't have that. You just have...
It's just you. It's
just
all
me.
about you and that baby.
Just me, and just watching her closely and making sure that, you know, everything's going well, feeding and
Well, Dr. Campbell, what would you say is the most important thing that parents need to know when they're making that transition, taking their baby home?
I think the most important thing for parents is that they understand that it will take time for the baby to adjust, for themselves to adjust to having the baby home. Depending on the healthcare needs of the infant, they may have to bring home a baby on oxygen or on a monitor, or may not. So we do tailor the advice we give to families based on the particular needs of their baby. But I think the greatest is really just that adjustment and becoming comfortable with having the baby home and feeling confident in themselves as parents.
Well, I think the biggest concern is that something might go wrong. The baby spikes a fever, the baby starts vomiting, you know, something changes. What type of contingency plans do you help parents set up in advance before they take the baby home?
I think the most important thing for any parent, but in particular a parent with a child who's been sick or is born prematurely, is to have an identified pediatrician, a primary care provider for that child, pediatrician, family physician, who can know that child well, who the family can feel comfortable talking with, calling for advice for their concerns.
One of the things that parents sometimes do when something happens at 3 in the morning, it doesn't always happen at 3 in the morning, it can't happen at 3 in the afternoon, right? You can't get hold of the pediatrician, you don't know where to go. Sometimes they'll go to a clinic or they'll go to a hospital that's the closest, but they don't have a pediatric service. What are the things that you should do? 3 in the morning, your baby's hot, you don't know what to do.
Well, I think that the first thing, as I said, it is important that the family first try and contact the pediatrician, who will clearly know their child the best. If the pediatrician is not available or they're not able to make immediate contact, call the NICU. Where the baby had been. The staff there does know the baby, and I know certainly our unit and many of the NICUs across the country encourage the parents, let them know that we remain there for them. So at least they can raise their questions, raise their concerns. We may then direct them to take the baby to the nearest emergency room or bring the baby to the hospital, whichever is appropriate for their concern.
With Miss Madison, who, by the way, is no longer here, and that's a hint of some of the issues that you're dealing with her being 21 months old. Child is gone.
Yes,
She's moved on to other more exciting things.
Yes.
But as she's gotten older, you've had to deal with different things. Tell us about that.
basically, her height, her weight is still a constant issue with her.
She's a tiny little thing. How much does she weigh?
She was 2 pounds 6 ounces when she was born.
Okay.
Now she's 18 pounds. So I still have the concern with the weight, her feeding. She still only takes 4 ounces at a time.
Does she interact with other children her age appropriately, or she
Oh,
just
yes.
hangs with younger kids?
Well, she has 3 older siblings at home, and when my friends come that have babies her age, she knows to, they hug, they play, they swap bottles, that sort of thing.
Well, Dr. Campbell, what kind of support systems are there in place for the families? I mean, obviously you're supporting the baby, you're doing everything for this baby. What do you do to help the parents emotionally through this?
Well, I think that what's most important is to be able to provide parents opportunities to meet and talk with other parents who are in a similar situation, who have premature babies. One of the things that many of our families confront is the fact that they receive lots of unsolicited advice.
Oh, sure.
Usually from people who have never seen a preemie,
right, have no
certainly
clue. Right.
have never been involved in the care of a premature child, and are full of wisdom, if you will,
Yes,
in
yes.
terms of how they should be caring for that child, what they should be doing. And that can be very stressful for families.
Yeah. Now, you are in a very unusual situation because, Tracy, you have had two children that were preemies. Helena, who, thank God, was here because she's got little Madison, she was also a preemie. Now, how old is she now?
Well, Victoria is actually the one that was.
Okay, Victoria. And how old is she?
She's 10 now.
She's 10. And then little Madison, we know, is 21 months. So there's quite an age span there in terms of the years and also the medical service. Right. Tell us the difference between having a preemie back then and having a preemie now.
I didn't have the overnight, the room in at the hospital. I was just, they told me I can bring her home, and I brought her home. Other than her usual pediatric visits, I didn't have anyone like to come in. I didn't have the early intervention.
How did you feel, you know, back then, some 8 years ago, when you had a premature baby? I mean, how did it affect you? I mean, were you completely depressed about it, or did you feel like it was going to be okay?
I was depressed while she was there, you know, having to leave her there, and as the other parents spoke of, you leave and then you come back. That was hard.
I could imagine. I mean, the big thing is having the baby and taking the baby home, and everybody wants to see the new baby, and you had to come home without a baby.
Yes, for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
I had to do that.
And how long was your older daughter in the hospital before she went home?
The same amount of time, about 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. It's incredible that we've come so far, you know, with babies. And obviously they both did very well.
Yes.
Miss Madison is doing extremely well, and she's having a wonderful time here in the hospital, just exploring all things. And that's a good sign.
That
she's a healthy
is a
baby.
good sign.
So, Dr. Campbell, when parents take their kids home for the very first time from the NICU, they're scared to death. They're worried something really bad might happen. Do you have any words of encouragement and words of advice for them as they take their babies home?
Well, I think that we always encourage parents. I think probably the most important thing is for them to spend as much time with their baby while the baby's in the hospital so that they can get to know their child. And that, in a way, will help a little bit with the transition home. In terms of resources to support the transition home, again, I can't stress enough having a good primary care provider that the parents feel comfortable talking with. Also, depending on their insurance and the hospital that their child is cared for, home care.
Absolutely.
With a nurse who can visit periodically.
That's so critical. And also, one day they're going to be running around like Madison. That's the good news. Thank you all so much for your insights today. Check out these websites here for resources for premature babies right there on the internet. We've got preemies.org or prematurity.org, or you can contact the March of Dimes information line, and there's the number. And they also have a website, and that's modimes.org.
For more information on today's topics, visit keepingkidshealthy.org.
Weeks. They ended up coming 6 weeks early. So that was a bit of a shock.
Samantha and Gerard Masconi came into the world 6 weeks earlier than expected, weighing just a little over 3 pounds each. Immediately, the Masconis' whole world was turned upside down, and the NICU became the focus of their lives.
You realize how fragile their little lives are at that point, and it's, you know, it's heart-wrenching, it is. It's really heart-wrenching.
Initially,
Hello, I'm Dr. Winnie King, and welcome to Keeping Kids Healthy. Now, this is a program about your children's health, and it comes to you from the lobby of the Children's Hospital at Montefiore in the Bronx. During an average week in the United States, there are over 8,000 preterm babies born. That's babies that are delivered prior to the 37th week of pregnancy and often weigh only 2 to 4 pounds.
parents are very frightened, and we offer them as much emotional support as we can.
The Masconis learned firsthand how unpredictable life in the NICU can be when Gerard developed an infection.
I was feeling very good because they were born, they were never on oxygen. Things were going very, very smoothly. But it's amazing how quickly things can turn around. A simple thing like a staph infection.
Many times, these babies have to spend the first few weeks or even months of their lives in a neonatal intensive care unit, which we call a NICU. Now, life in the NICU can be terrifying for new parents, but it can also feel like a safe place for them and their little babies. Come with us as we visit one family that gave birth to premature twins.
We weren't totally surprised that they were premature, but we were surprised at how premature. Being twins, we expected them to go about